bombas nesse momento aqui no centro histórico de Porto Alegre. Essa é a situação.
Sim, ó, por já. Só assim. É só assim que temos show. Não foi.
It started before sunrise. Quiet streets, dark skies, and the sound of rain tapping gently on rooftops. But within minutes, that calm cracked wide open. Storm Claudia slammed into Portugal like a freight train, unleashing hurricane-force winds over 80 Meteorologists sheets of rain, so heavy drivers couldn't see past their hood, and sudden floods that swallowed entire neighborhoods in just minutes. Lisbon's highways vanished under rushing water. Cars were lifted off the ground like toys. Power grids snapped, plunging more than 20,000 homes into darkness. In Setúbal, families climbed onto tables, stairs, and rooftops as water forced its way through doors and windows. By the time the sun rose, parts of the country looked less like a European capital and more like the aftermath of a Gulf Coast hurricane. This wasn't just a bad storm, it was a brutal wake-up call for an entire nation, and its name was Claudia.
É impressionante a quantidade de água que sai de dentro da casa de banho. Caralho! Puta, mano!
Olha essa situação. Olha, Gilberto aqui.
When Storm Claudia made landfall along Portugal's coastline, it didn't ease in it attacked. In less than 24 hours, the storm dumped 2 to 6 inches of rain with some hotspots in Lisbon and Setúbal, drowning under nearly 6 inches in one brutal burst. Streets that normally carried morning commuters turned into fast-moving rivers, sweeping debris cars and mud through neighborhoods that had never seen flooding like this before. Winds, gusting over 80 km/h, ripped branches off trees, peeled roofs from homes, and sent metal street signs whipping through the air like shrapnel. Emergency lines overloaded as rescue crews raced from one crisis to another, flooded homes, stranded drivers, collapsed roads, and landslides triggered by soaked hillsides. In the small town of Ferro, tragedy struck when a sudden surge of water trapped an elderly couple inside their home, leaving first responders helpless against the speed and violence of the floodwaters. Throughout the Lisbon metro area, trains stalled, buses stopped running, and entire communities were forced to shelter in darkness as power stations failed under the storm's weight. By dawn, Portugal wasn't dealing with a storm anymore. It was dealing with a nationwide emergency.
Só assim, ó, por já. Só assim. É só assim que temos show. Não fora.
Essa situação. Olha, Gilberto aqui. Surreal. A Olguinha também tá lá em cima. A Dona Fina, não sei se ela estava em casa. Dona Regina. Ah, não, Dona Regina e Dona...
Lisbon, usually glowing with pastel rooftops and sunrise reflections over the Tagus River, woke up to chaos. Storm Claudia's rains slammed into the capital with such force that entire districts disappeared under 2 to 4 feet of water in less than an hour. Major boulevards like Avenida Almirante Reis and the surrounding low-lying neighborhoods became impassable trenches, swallowing cars up to their windows and forcing residents to climb onto balconies just to stay above the rising water line. The city's aging drainage system collapsed almost instantly under the pressure. Metro stations flooded, shutting down entire sections of the subway as electrical panels sparked and emergency teams rushed to prevent potential short circuits. Bus lines were suspended. Tunnels filled like bathtubs. At the height of the storm, Lisbon's famous cable car-style elevators froze mid-ride as power failures rippled through the capital. Across the metropolitan area, families were evacuated from ground-floor apartments. Firefighters waded through waist-deep water carrying children on their shoulders, and rescue boats navigated downtown streets that looked more like river channels than urban boulevards. More than 20,000 homes were knocked offline as substations flooded, leaving neighborhoods in darkness while howling winds shook loose roof tiles and sent them crashing into the streets below. For Lisbon, this wasn't a passing storm. It was the kind of catastrophic hit that rewrites a city's memory.
Caralho! Puta!
Ah, já foi, já foi.
South of Lisbon, the district of Setúbal took one of the hardest and most heartbreaking blows. As Storm Claudia's rain bands tightened and intensified, the region was hammered by 50 to 150 millimeters of rain up to 6 inches in a single day, turning quiet residential streets into violent brown rivers that tore through homes, businesses, and schools. In the town of Setúbal, tragedy unfolded inside a modest single-story home where an elderly couple was found dead after rising floodwaters surged through their neighborhood before sunrise. Rescue teams believe the water rose so fast, filling rooms in minutes, that the couple had no time to escape. Their deaths became the darkest symbol of how suddenly Claudia overwhelmed Portugal's most vulnerable communities. Across Setúbal roads, buckled retaining walls collapsed and fire crews battled more than 200 emergency calls in just a few hours. National Road 378. The main route between Setúbal and Sesimbra vanished beneath swirling floodwater, trapping several cars, including an ambulance with responders forced to radio for backup as water rose around their vehicle. Neighborhoods in Montijo reported businesses destroyed, from corner cafes to dance studios where floors, furniture, and equipment were drowned under several feet of mud and water. Schools across the region shut down. Power outages swept through over 16,000 homes, leaving families scrambling for candles and battery packs as wind gusts over 80 evacuations bent palm trees sideways and ripped roofing off of municipal buildings. Even football fields weren't spared. Entire wall sections collapsed under the weight of the storm. For Setúbal, this was not simply flooding. It was a community under siege, struggling to hold on as the storm turned every weakness in local infrastructure into a point of failure.
Só assim. É só assim que temos show. Não que feira.
As Portugal reeled, Storm Claudia barreled east into Spain, unleashing a second wave of chaos across Andalusia and the western peninsula. By the time the storm crossed the border, it was dragging with it near hurricane-force wind gusts up to 70 mm sheets of heavy rain and unstable atmospheric cells capable of spawning destructive tornadoes. In Huelva province, firefighters responded to more than 65 emergency incidents in a single afternoon. Downed power lines, crushed vehicles, uprooted trees, and building fragments scattered like shrapnel across city blocks. But the most shocking event came from the rural Huerto Ramirez agricultural complex, where a violent tornado carved through livestock buildings, snapping beams, leveling barns, and tossing debris as if it weighed nothing. One 3,300-pound trailer was reportedly lifted and thrown over 1,600 feet from its original position, an almost unbelievable display of Claudia's brute force. In coastal towns like Cartaya, Ayamonte, Isla, Cristina, and El Rompido roofs peeled away under wind pressure. Streetlights folded and seawater surged inland, turning beachfront neighborhoods into debris fields. At the Juan Ramon Jimenez School, part of the gymnasium roof collapsed, scattering insulation and rafters across the floor, thankfully before students arrived. Further north, strong winds tore into the Exhibition and Congress Center in Ayamonte, shredding parts of the structure and sending metal panels skidding across parking lots. Local officials activated municipal emergency plans as residents recorded the destruction in real time, their videos flooding social media and showing just how violently Storm Claudia was reshaping their towns. While Spain avoided the catastrophic loss of life seen in Portugal, the storm still delivered a bitter warning. Claudia was not a localized event. It was a sweeping European system capable of unleashing different kinds of destruction across thousands of miles. By dawn, Lisbon and the Tagus Valley were in full crisis mode. What began as heavy overnight rain escalated into urban flooding powerful enough to immobilize entire districts. Streets around Baja Alcantara and Oriente disappeared beneath fast-moving water, swallowing cars up to their windows and sweeping debris through intersections where morning commuters usually crowd. In Montijo, just across the Tagus River, the situation deteriorated even faster. Floodwater burst through low-lying neighborhoods, filling garages, submerging parking lots, and trapping vehicles in place like stranded boats. Several schools were forced to close within minutes of opening their hallways filling with water, while emergency alerts urged parents to stay home and avoid travel. By 8:30 a.m., more than 16,000 households across Lisbon, Setúbal, and Santarém had lost electricity. Power stations strained under the relentless pounding of 60-70 Menepe winds, and entire streets fell dark as transformers tripped offline. Civil protection teams rushed to dozens of emergencies at once, over 200 incidents reported within just a few hours, most involving rising water levels, blocked roads, and fallen trees. On National Road 378 between Seixal and Sesimbra, cars were left abandoned in chest-deep water after drivers became trapped by flash flooding. Firefighters battled through dangerous currents to reach stranded families, while city crews worked non-stop to clear drains overwhelmed by mud leaves and debris. Even as rainfall slowed in some areas, saturated soil and high tide kept water from receding, prolonging the paralysis across the metropolitan region. For residents, it was a morning that felt unreal, a moment when one of Europe's iconic capitals seemed to pause in place, drowned by a storm that refused to let up. Lisbon, usually glowing with early morning sunlight, was now a maze of flooded tunnels, stalled buses, and powerless neighborhoods. And as Claudia continued pushing north, one sobering truth remained: the storm had revealed vulnerabilities that could no longer be ignored.
There's a guy trapped in here at the moment. I hope you get these ones did.
Storm Claudia may be moving away from Portugal, but the scars it left behind aren't going anywhere. Entire neighborhoods drowned in hours. Thousands lost power. Families waded through water just to reach safety. And once again, Europe was reminded that extreme weather is no longer the exception, it's becoming the pattern. But moments like this aren't just stories about another country on the evening news. They're warnings for all of us. From Florida's hurricanes to California's atmospheric rivers to the Midwest's historic floods, the same forces shaping Portugal's disaster are shaping America's future too. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think storms like Claudia are part of a natural cycle, or a sign that the planet is changing faster than we're prepared for? Are our cities truly ready for back-to-back climate disasters, or are we still hoping they won't reach us? If this story opened your eyes, if it made you think about how fragile our world can be, don't let it end here. Hit like to support real stories that matter. Share this video so more people understand what's happening around the globe. Subscribe for more powerful breakdowns of the storms, floods, quakes, and events that are reshaping our world. Because awareness isn't just information, it's the first step toward resilience.